I did not share.
You didn't leave
that
any
on.
for.
Good evening. If everybody could get seated, we'll get started. Did that hear me?
I don't know. I think we have.
Hello? Great. All right. Good evening. I call this meeting of the Montgomery County School Board to order at 7 p.m. on October 19th, 2021. As you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Next item is the adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have an agenda. Our student representatives tonight are Naira Rodriguez Fernandez from Blacksburg High School and Ann Ray Sisson from Eastern Montgomery High School. They will read the mission and beliefs for MCPS.
MCPS. Is it on? MCPS is an innovative educational community. We value diversity and we are committed to equity and inclusion. MCPS empowers learners to realize success in an ever-changing global society throughout collaboration with communities, families, staff, and students. MCPS provides a safe, engaging learning environment and intentional exposure to positive social, emotional, and academic experiences.
All students can learn in order to pursue their dreams.
Schools are safe places of joy, wonder, and creativity.
Every person deserves to be loved, valued, and respected.
Kindness is an essential skill of a responsible, productive community member.
The diversity of our community is one of our greatest strengths.
All people deserve equitable access to opportunities and resources.
Every child deserves an advocate.
Honoring the voices of students and other stakeholders strengthens the school community.
Open communication and feedback are vital to our growth.
Learning and teaching are collective efforts that begin at birth and involve the entire community.
Relationship building and high expectations are foundational to student success.
Thank you both. Steve, do you need to open the meeting? That was great. Okay, then we'll go ahead and proceed with our joint meeting, and I'll turn it over to Tommy Krantz for the update on the Christiansburg construction.
We can do it from here. Morgan was going to run the videos. From
Okay,
there,
so
but
then
whatever
we
you-
just,
however
we
you
can do
wanna
it back here, so we'll start the video. So we're going to start off today to give you an update on Christiansburg Elementary, Christiansburg Primary, and Bellevue Elementary. Morgan Wood did an excellent job putting together a video. It's something I couldn't even thought of. So you want to start that, Morgan, and we'll go through it. So this is a view of Bellevue Elementary. We're currently, what you see is the backside of the gym. This will be the new parent drop-off area. In the middle here is a hallway or a courtyard between the old building to the left and the new building to the right. This will be the connection that we have with the new building. We're moving into this new space on or before December 22nd. We will be moving the principal's office and 2 classrooms into this new wing while we do the renovations inside on the admin area. That's a standard size classroom. You see the windows that we put in every classroom we built at all 3 schools to give more natural light throughout the building way. Every one of our classrooms that are new, you'll see doorways connecting rooms so that a teacher can, one teacher can oversee 2 classrooms in the case of an emergency or any situation during the day. You'll also see that we put restrooms in many of our classrooms, particularly at CPS. So we don't have, with the smaller children, they can actually have their restrooms inside the classroom themselves, which makes it a much easier situation for teacher and the rest of the staff. This is the gang restroom because in Bellevue, their 5th grade class will primarily be in that wing. So they will be using the upper size type rest facilities. Standard gymnasium that we put on all 3 of our elementary schools. 2 of our 3. And all of this will be done by December 22nd. Bellevue is a $5 million project. Christiansburg Elementary is an $11 million project. This is their main hallway. The admin area is to our left and slightly behind us. We renovated inside here. We lowered their ceilings, LED lighting, painted their hallways, and also installed new cabinetry inside their classrooms. This wing here, we call it the A wing. This particular wing, we put new ceilings, LED lighting. We also, those walls did not go all the way up to the ceiling. We put all those walls up to the ceilings, as well as doorways and an emergency exit to meet the fire code. This is their main annex right here. There's 5 classrooms with art, special education, music. They call it specialty classrooms. These 5 rooms, once we complete an addition that you'll see in a second, these rooms will all move to the addition, and then we'll move the permanent grades into these classrooms. We intend to make that move hopefully over the Christmas holidays, if not during Thanksgiving holidays. It just depends. We're looking at a completion date of Thanksgiving to December the 17th is where we're looking at completion to occur. You can see the cabinetry that's going into the buildings, into our rooms. You see the windows. Every single classroom has that wide open window space. You see the doorway connecting the rooms there. You see the openness going into the hallway right there, the windows there. So you got good visibility from all parts of the building into your classroom. And then you see the all glass on the back end. So we even have light coming into our hallway. If you would walk that space, it is a totally different feel for that room than it's ever been in that building. We now are in the gym area, so there's 2 sets of additions. This is on the second side, the one closest to the tennis courts. Very similar to what we're doing over at Bellevue Elementary. We come out of here, we've got resource rooms, classrooms, and storage room. Again, you see the windows. So lots of natural light. And that's the one thing we've been trying to do with all of our new spaces is natural light as much as possible. Here's going to be the parent drop-off. We completed that work just within the last 24 hours. We'll open that the first of next school year. But this is where parents will come off so we can get them off of Betty Drive as well as Wade's Lane. Next one we're going to look at is Christiansburg Primary. Christiansburg Primary is the biggest one. This is a $19 million project. This will be done in 3 phases. The first phase was what you see right there. So we went from the old part of the building to the new. Resource rooms, classrooms. We'll be moving this particular school over Christmas in all likelihood. We have 17 classrooms, the admin building, and their media center to move so that when January starts, we can do the renovations on the rest of the building, and that'll be completed December of 2022. So this is the new wing. This is an art room. Again, the large windows, natural lights, LED lighting throughout. Now we come into the true additions here. It's an L shape, but that's a standard classroom. And you'll see this throughout the building in every single classroom. The sinks, the restrooms, and the cabinetry is throughout. Here's our offshoot wing. The connecting doorway. The windows into the hallway, so there's complete visibility anywhere inside that room. This takes that off on the side where the new parent drop-off area is. Come January 1st, the buses will be using this temporarily for the rest of this school year. And then once the new school year starts, parents will be coming through here to give us a bigger queue. We'll be able to put 100 cars off of Betty Drive onto the queue and take ourselves up the roadway. And then what we're doing at CES, we do not anticipate many cars sitting on Betty Drive trying to get into either school. So we're pretty proud of what we've shown y'all. Does anybody have any questions about what you saw? No, because when we did this tour, there's too many students. Yeah, we can try to get over there when we don't have students inside our building. Okay? So I'm going to introduce Josh Bauer is our architect. Crabtree is the architect we selected through a competitive selection process. And they're the architects handling the CHS. So he's going to give you an overview of where we're at, what we've done to date, and then I'll give you the number side of it. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Krantz. Yes, my name is Josh Bauer with Crabtree Warbon Associates. I don't have a video with music today, but I promise next time we'll have a really cool video with music as we walk through the space. So we're going to talk a little bit about the process, what's happened over the last couple of months. We'll show you some images of floor plans and potentially of what the elevations of the building could look like, and then we'll kind of open it up for any questions. So I guess I control this. So over the last couple of months, since we met last, we've had some really fantastic meetings. We've been able to engage the community in multiple meetings, the teachers, the students, the leadership team for the school division. We've had, as I said, multiple meetings. Before we even put pencil to paper, we had a lot of engagement talking about both wants and needs and challenges that folks see at the CHS site. And then ongoing meetings have been with a core committee, and that core committee is made up of leadership from the school division, community members, teachers. It's really been a fantastic committee. Of course, I believe Tony's here somewhere. He is, as a leader of the school, he's up there. Has been fantastic. The whole group really has been great about giving us input, being engaging at every single meeting. As a matter of fact, just this morning we met again, and so what we're trying to identify is the wants and needs to make sure that the design of the building not only works for today's needs, but then also for the future. And as we continue to develop the schematic design of the building. So this is the site and kind of the development as we currently stand. We're really excited that that next Friday we're meeting with the town to engage them to talk about the potential changes that we're going to be making to the site and improvements. And let's see if I can. It doesn't quite work. So I'm going to use mine. So off to the right. Let's see if this works a little better. Nope, it doesn't want to work. So off to the right-hand side is North Franklin. Be running up and down, and then across the bottom is Independence Boulevard, just trying to give you an orientation. The white, as you look at the white building, that is the existing building, and the gray are the additions. So a couple of things that we want to try to do on the site based on comments is try to have a better separation of car and bus drop-off, and also try to increase both of them, both the car drop-off area and the bus drop-off, so that way there's less confusion in the morning and the afternoon, and we're trying to get the cars and the buses off of the street and onto the property. So those are some improvements that we're looking to make. Also, some things that we heard is try to make the entrance more pronounced, and also to identify this high school as Christiansburg High School. So for those who are familiar with the building, it's a very austere a brick building that was built in the 70s. There's, I think, almost 10 classrooms total have windows. It's very brick. It's very 70s. Focused on energy efficiency at the time, and so what we are showing is the classroom addition, the admin addition on the planned south side, and then the gymnasium on the planned north side. But the goal is to try to enhance parking and get a better bus and car drop off, and not only for the daytime, but for those of us who come in the evenings for sports, to also make sure the sports the parking is conducive to be able to get you inside the building for sports activities or for plays or for whatever those evening activities are. Make sure the parking is conducive for that. Thank you. So as we're looking at the building, it's the same orientation. So the entrance is right here. So across the bottom would be Independence Boulevard, and off to the right-hand side would be North Franklin. So you can see here that we would have the entrance with the administration of the nurse area in the pink on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side would be your cafeteria and your dining room. So the addition is located, if you can see my red dot, is located from here down and connects to the building. A couple things this does for us is, one is it allows better flow for the building, so it kind of gives almost a circle that you can enter at this point and be able to travel all the way around to CTE and back. So from a flow standpoint, for those of us who have been high school students, know that that's a key factor, is how long is it going to take you to get from one classroom to another. And so on the lower level, this is the ground level. So we have the administration nurse area, and then coming down the classroom wing, we have your social studies and English classrooms, which are in blue, along with world language. The knuckle, which is located right here, is where you would have student toilet rooms, faculty toilets, collaborative learning areas. And then as we look at the future, one opportunity for an addition, if this building were to grow, could be right here and basically growing off of this knuckle. So that way we're keeping all the classrooms kind of in the same area. So a couple things this does for us is it allows us to connect multiple parts of the building. This also allows us to create a safe outdoor environment for student dining, along with student classroom space. Could be located all in this white area in between the building, that we can securely make those areas for students to be and for teachers to have classroom in that space. So the main street, which we'll talk about in a minute here, so it said that you have an entrance, And this is the main street. This is your existing auditorium that we're going to do some light renovations on. The lower level is your academic support or your physical education support areas. So team rooms, locker rooms, wrestling room. One of the things that the coaches and the phys ed are really excited about is we're going to be able to have a wrestling room without a column in the middle of the wrestling room, which is really exciting. So we're relocating the wrestling room instead of making sure there's not a column in the center. The red area here is your music. So these are your arts. We're able to locate them adjacent to to your auditorium, which is fantastic relationally. So that way that the dressing rooms and the choral and the music and everything is located right in the areas that they're going to have the most amount of impact right across the way. And we're also really to allow one of the other fantastic is that because they're on an outside wall, is get a lot of daylight into those spaces. One thing that you're going to hear about a lot today is the ability for daylight in classrooms and in labs. And with this design, we're really, so if you've been in the building, it's a little bit of a challenge, with the current layout and trying to get daylight into spaces. And what you're going to see here is that almost 100% of the classrooms and teaching spaces now would have daylight in this design. So I said we're locating, music, choral. The entire suite is going to be here right adjacent to the auditorium. Here, all on the first level. And then up in the top corner here, we have the new gymnasium. Which is really kind of more of a field house to allow, this will be the kind of the main arena for basketball, for volleyball, for indoor track, and for your seating area for all of your athletics, whether it's phys ed or for athletics in general. So as we go to the upper level, directly above the administrative suite is the media center, your library. And student services or guidance area are located directly above. One of the things that we're able to do is create an integrated stair to go right from the administration up into the guidance to the student services. It's interesting that when we were kids, the guidance was always right next to the admin, and it was always common for those to be integral. One thing that we found over time is that they're really providing two different functions. And while they want to have a adjacency relationship, students think about student services where they're going for counseling, they're going for career services versus administration. And by the way, administration is great, Tony, but the administration may be looked at maybe a little bit more as more kind of a punishment sometimes or as authoritarian. So by having them on separate floors but still having them connected, students kind of look at them in two different ways. So we have the student services and media center directly above the admin, and then going down the classroom wing, we have your math, and then science are located on the upper floor of the classroom wing. And one of the things that really worked out well is to have a connection between science and CTE. So this is your current CTE space that we're able to enhance as part of this project. So you have especially at CHS, you have a fantastic CTE program. It really is an amazing program. But there's some challenges with your current space is that the classrooms aren't necessarily adjacent to it. There's not a great vision. So one of the things that we're able to do in this design is put the classrooms adjacent to the labs. Classrooms are in dark blue, labs are in light blue, and really have a visual, that when you're in one space versus the other, you can see into them. Have the teacher's office and toilet rooms are going to be directly adjacent to it. It's going to have a much better flow and much better adjacency for the program to be able to operate. And so the science is connected directly here and can have a relationship with robotics, which is going to be located right here on the corner. So as I said, this really allows us to create a overall oval design with the building. So flow is going to be so much better. Students will have a much easier time getting from classroom to classroom in a reasonable amount of time than they currently have to observe. Existing wise, so we are going to be renovating the CTE space, improving that. And also doing a little bit of an expansion, going into the space with adjacencies to drafting and art located here. And if you notice that all these labs are on exterior walls, so all of them were able to get daylight into those spaces. So the field house is located here, adjacent to that space. What's really great about locating the field house here is it allows us to have some additional parking in the rear, along with a drive for a drop-off. and a connection to the fantastic exterior facilities that you have, between the football and baseball and softball fields, is that now this would be located to have a direct access. So relationally, with your team rooms, with your weight room, your fitness rooms, the entrance can all have an indoor-outdoor relationship stronger than ever with this facility. I was saying earlier about that Main Street. So the Main Street is located here, and that Main Street allows you to go from the cafeteria, which is down below, up into this space. So this is your student locker area. It's also, lockers are very interesting. So when we were kids, everybody had a locker. It was very common for every student, every quarter to have a locker space. It is very interesting that as we've gone to, in many cases, a block schedule, or we have a lot of iPads or Chromebooks for students to carry, that students aren't desiring lockers anymore. And you think, okay, well, I've been doing this for now 25 years, and I know this. But when I took my daughter to be a freshman in high school, and I said, "Hey, honey, let's go get your locker," and she's like, "Oh, Dad, nobody does lockers anymore. You're so uncool." And I know I'm uncool, but I said it's interesting that sometimes your professional and personal life don't always connect. So we do have a locker bank area, and what's super cool about this is that we are keeping the lockers low, so they're going to be around 3 foot in height. We're going to have countertop area, and then areas for students to charge their personal devices. So with quick charge stations, so we're thinking about how can we make this friendly for teachers, for students, and really kind of make the most impact in every space in this entire building. In here, so we have art, we have drafting, some additional CTE spaces, and then I said we have your main commons here with the learning stair, which is an opportunity for multiple classes to be able to get together. So if they want to do a collaboration, a math and science class wants to get together, they can come over here to a learning stair and be able to really engage in this space and have multiple 2 or 3 or 4 classrooms together at the same time. And then we're going to do a light renovation on your existing gymnasium, which is located here. So that's kind of the summary. We are still in schematic design, so there's a lot of details that we're working through. I said the committee, the core committee that we meet with once a week or once every 2 weeks has been fantastic in helping us come up with this concept to make sure that we're maximizing the amount of space, that we're getting both what the students need, what the teachers need. Our next big step in the process is to now go in and be more in depth, and you'll start to see the furniture that we're placing in there. We're going to be meeting even more so with teachers, CTE, art teachers, and physical education, and going through and meeting individually with all of those, and talking about their spaces to make sure that we're serving both the current needs and the future needs inside of the building. So as we now go from the inside to the outside, these are some initial thoughts that we had on what the exterior of the building could look like. So one of the things that we've heard all along was windows, daylight, identity. What can we do to make, to have more identity, and what can we have to do to have more windows? And so this is the beginning of the elevations of our development. So this is standing on the student parking lot, but also with our back to Independence Boulevard. On the right-hand side, way off to your right would be North Franklin. To your left would be your athletic stadium. So this gives you an idea of what the front entrance could look like. So you can hear we have a lot of glass and a lot of identity as folks are driving down, you're turning off in North Franklin, driving on Independence. You now really have as an identity for the school. You know where the front entrance is. It's not a guess. So you can see a lot of glass here. The dining, your dining experience would be right here, along with, this is dining. This is your media center on the upper level. So we have a canopy there for students to stay out of the rain when they're getting dropped off, or they're coming from the parking lot. So as we come down, so now Independence Boulevard is off to our left, and North Franklin is to our rear. So this is that knuckle that we talked about earlier for the addition. So this is the classroom addition, that kind of the L-shaped addition. And you can start to now see the kind of the corner of the building where that knuckle was, with the collaborative learning labs, the teacher workrooms, the stair to get you from one level to another is all going to be located kind of in this knuckle here. And you can see the front entrance just off in the distance to really identify and say, this is where you need to go to be able to come into the building. Going back to that front entrance from Independence Boulevard. So I said this is just another shot. And then one final shot of that new potential front entrance for the building. And so we're really looking at things like identity, a lot of daylighting, and making sure that that we identify this as Christiansburg High School. It's very clear that this building now has identity. So, Mr. Krantz, I believe that you're up.
So we've looked at, as we divided this thing up on a financial standpoint, because we've reached the point in the schematic design that we've developed a budget. So now it's trying to determine exactly what our funding levels will be so that we can then proceed to move this project toward eventually getting permits, beginning the site work, and then beginning the construction phase. So we've broken it out into 3 scenarios. The first scenario assumes a $75 million funding level. Scenario 2 is an $80 million, and scenario 3 is a 96.7. That's less than the 100 because we right now have gone from a $110 million budget down to a $106 million budget, and that's the difference there. The $8 million is what's been invested currently in the athletic complex. So that was your football, track, softball, concession stands, as well as improvements on the baseball field. The $10 million, and we'll talk a little bit more, but this is the ESSER ARP funds. The school system received $13.5 million from ESSER. Those funds have to be used on our side, 20% for learning loss. That was accomplished through the summer school that we did in 2021, and then the summer school in 2022 and 2023. One of the other conditions within the ARP program was for schools that you had to get input from your stakeholders. And Annie and her team did a great job surveying all of our schools, getting the information that what they wanted to do with the money. They've developed a plan. And so between ESSER 2, that has about $4 million left, plus ESSER 3 or ARP, they're able to meet the academic component and still leave us $10 million that can be used for the mechanical system. And we'll talk more about what the restrictions are on that side. So you can see the total investment that we would make if we did the 75 million is 93, 98 on the 80, and 114.7 million on the $100 million. Under those scenarios, we right now are into our master facilities plan. That's a component of the strategic plan that was adopted by our board under learning environment. Within that plan, we begin with what our enrollments are to determine what our needs are in schools. What classrooms do we need? Do we need additional dining room spaces? Whatever our growth is. So we've got right now 3 scenarios, 1,200 students, 1,300, and 1,500 students. Within scenario 1 and 2, we put cuts to be determined. That'll be based off of as we go through the program and we look at what everything that's currently in the plan, what can be cut and still meet the needs of Christiansburg High School or what may not be able to get cut. We currently are sitting at 362,000 square feet of space. We believe that under the 1,400 to 1,500 scenario here, we could get our numbers down to about 305,000 square feet of space. To understand that, currently CHS is 222,000 square feet of space. Currently Blacksburg High School is 293,000 square feet of space. When we take the 3 scenarios and look at what we're asking, so under the current scenario 1 at 75 million, ESSER we would put up 10 million, athletics is currently 8, which has been spent, so a total investment by the county into schools of $93.0 million. That we get if we did it in 22, we would get to our construction docks, start our site improvements, and complete the project sometime here between 2024 and 2025. Under the scenarios that Davenport presented, and we just used their cash that freed up at 4%. Actual market rates will be different. But you can see there's no real, and as Courtney said, there's no real dollars available for other projects until 2027. We right now are looking at potentially Harding Elementary at that point of 30 million. That's just a placeholder. There's nothing magical about that number at this point. There's only 13.8 million that potentially frees up in 2027, and you can see how it grows through 2032. Under scenario 2, we have the $80 million coming from the county. It still gets me out into 2025. There's less dollars here because it's a structured transaction. So in a structured transaction, you'll see more interest expense than on a traditional level debt approach, they call it, or straight amortization. And then you can see it goes out a little bit further for us to get any significant dollars for future availability of projects for the school systems. Then under scenario 3, which is the $100 million or 96.7, we have $10 million from ESSER, the $8 million in athletics. And you can see under this scenario, Harding goes further out. Instead of being in that 27-28 time frame, now it's in the 29-30 time frame. And you can see everything goes out further under that side. Now, the challenges that we face, number one, ESSER funds. ESSER for us has to be spent all by September 30th of 2024. That's a hard date. That cannot change. Number 2, it has to be approved by VDOE. That is another step for us. And in order to get VDOE has to be comfortable that we will actually have it all spent. They do not want anything going back. The next thing that's critical for us is to move into the A&E plan, going from schematic into the construction side or the design side is going to require dollars for the A&E. While the school system appreciates the 2.5 cents that we get, right now I don't have enough in those funds that you could do the A&E component of this. So that would be a request from the schools to the county on whether we could get funding for the A&E component. If we were to include the delays, which I'm not saying they won't happen because everybody's got to make tough choices, but as we look at any delay, it could have a material impact on our ability to complete the ESSER component, which would mean that $10 million may not be available for funding of the project. Also, we continue to see great increases, price increases still on our construction projects. We're not seeing anything, we keep reading things that are going to slow down, but we're not seeing it yet. We do mention that any shortfalls, as we discussed, could be used on the 2.5 cent real estate funds. And like I said, that's about $2.2 million. Some things before you ask the questions begin. Last night we had the conversation about the study at Christiansburg. The Christiansburg study, which I said was in 2017, was a mistake. It's in 2014 that study was done. When that study was done, OWPR projected that CHS would cost $71 to $79 million. If you use a 3% inflation rate from 14 through to today's dollars, that's the equivalent of $90 to $100 million. So very close to where our project dollars are sitting at. Another thing that's been discussed, not necessarily just with this group, but just inside the community, is that what CHS is asking for is just out of line compared to a BHS. When BHS was constructed, it was $62 million. You bring that up to today, you're sitting at a much higher number. On a per square foot basis, BHS actually came in higher than CHS. CHS is running about $300 a square foot. BHS was in the $305 to $308 a square foot range. So both buildings are similar. Not saying they're identical, not trying to say that, just looking at pure numbers as people talk about it, that we are looking at projects that are very similar to each other. No questions? I'm happy not to say anything else.
Let's go ahead.
1094, I'm sorry, with the vacancy, the absentee is 1094 approximately. Yes, sir, but I had looked at it update. That's why I had that number in my head.
Talking about $10 million that if we would take that, we knock 10 million off, which is a pretty significant chunk of this project. So with that in mind, I understand that you're asking to move forward. What's the deadline, I guess, for getting things rolling? Are we already pushing up against it? Is it next month? Is it in 3 months? What are we looking at here?
In my opinion, I'm at the line.
Okay.
Because right now there's so much, the state hasn't really defined how their process will work. So we're going to get in line, and just like other districts are doing, trying to get things approved from the ESSER standpoint. So I think I'm at that line today.
Okay.
I have a question. Are these working? That's not the question, but do we have any projections of student population over the next 5 to 10 years? I guess that's your question or Dr. Meyer's
At Christiansburg High School, we do have it. We see it growing to about 1,225 to 1,250 students over the next 8 to 10 years.
How about in other parts of the county?
We're completing that analysis as we speak as part of the master facilities plan.
Because as I see us going out another, 10 years, and I see the amount of construction going on in other parts of the county, my concern also is the ability of the existing schools in other parts of the county to be able to keep up with the student enrollment. We all know there's I don't know how many homes going up on Price's Fork Road. And I'm sure I don't know what the projections are in Christiansburg as far as housing and the building of housing in other parts of the county. So I think it's something we need to continue to keep in mind because it seems like there's a lot of rapid growth.
There's a lot of growth. Right around Price's Fork Elementary, the two developments are over 700 single-family residential units. Those units we predicted is about 350 elementary students. At that point in time, Price's Fork is now over capacity. So that's taken place. BMS, if I ask most people, how old's BMS, you tell me it's 10 to 15 years. BMS right now is sitting at 22 years of age. Mm-hmm. We're starting to see when a building reaches 20 years of age, and this will be in your master's facilities plan, it's not just new construction. It's not just renovations, but to do roofs. To do a roof at BMS, you're looking at $1.5 million to almost $2 million just to do the roof. We haven't discussed the mechanical systems that are starting to fail. We have that throughout the district. The majority of our schools are over 50 years of age. The majority are over 50. We think of it as being a new district. It's not. From a pure facility standpoint, it's not. Our equipment is extremely old. Kipps Elementary mechanical system should be completely pulled out, new system put in, as well as a roof. We're using a new product on Kipps roof as we speak. Trying to get most of the roof done on fewer dollars with a 15-year warranty instead of typically a 20-year warranty. Just because we don't have the dollars to do that roof. That roof, including the metal, we'd be looking over $2 million. That's going to be in your facilities report, because that's all important to know what the total dollars that are there and make those decisions.
Got to get really close to
Okay.
it.
Are we doing any renovations at the cafeterias at CPS or CES?
No, ma'am, not this time.
Are we
The
gonna
only
put
one
any
that we
kind of
did,
equipment in or
CES, we
anything?
did some painting. We've done, we changed out their stage, curtain area, which they asked for. We'll be doing some of that within CPS, but we weren't able, within the $35 million budget, we got everything we could do, but we couldn't do everything.
Right, I understand. I just have gotten some feedback about some dishwashers and some coolers and refrigerators and
We're
things like
looking
that.
at their equipment. That'll be also in the report.
That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yes, ma'am. And we're out there right now looking. Combi ovens are the biggest thing that I get the biggest bang for our bucks. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, trying to acquire them because of the chip issue is a challenge. So we're doing some used that are going to give us at least a 10-year life and get, because our numbers in our dining rooms are going up. And so
Right,
I've got to get
exactly.
some other equipment to be able to serve the students
And
fast.
remind me again, what year was Blacksburg High School built?
They opened in 2013, 13, 14.
14.
2013.
13.
2013, so.
2013, August, yeah.
Yeah, September, actually.
I mean, September, that's
The
right.
final payment was made in 2015.
Okay,
so I
well,
know
the
that.
question, oh, sorry, now it's on. I was just gonna make a point that it'll be 10 years when we start construction for Christiansburg High School. So I guess to the comments of futuristic building and things, Christiansburg's waited 10 years as well. So we've waited, or, they've waited their turn for that. And I've heard some comments about the field house and the track and things like that, but we have to keep in mind, we didn't have to buy property as well. Plus, we already had the shell of the building, which is an extremely expensive project. Am I correct
You're correct.
by saying
Yes,
that?
ma'am.
And property alone that we've had to purchase for other schools have been extremely expensive. And that's really the only, and I don't even want to call it extravagant, but something a little fancier that is in this project. Am I correct by saying that, basically? Other than up-to-date things that we'll have inside the building. That's the only thing that might be kind of little, kind of like wow factor.
I got you.
Huh?
Yes, ma'am. I think
Okay.
that's.
And, I used to think if our other schools didn't have it, that we shouldn't do that because this school doesn't have it or that doesn't. And a board member a long time ago helped me to understand that when you get the opportunity to build a school, you need to put as much in as you can that the students can utilize for the future, because you're not going to get but one chance for a long time. So, when we're looking at those plans, I think we need to stop and think about those things. And it really opened my eyes to that years ago. And I thought, you know what, he's right. He's right.
So, let me say, it hasn't been just 10 years, is this on?
Yes, ma'am.
Since Christiansburg waited?
Yep.
Because 10 years was since that one was built, but we were waiting
Oh, you're
since
right.
then,
Absolutely. I just
right?
mean from money
So
to
it's
money.
been closer to 20 years since Christiansburg has been waiting. And let's talk about that field house, gymnasium. There's nothing fancy about that. That is something that is not only needed in Christiansburg, but throughout the whole county.
Absolutely.
Throughout the whole region. Just like the turf fields, if we hadn't put that turf field in at Christiansburg High School, and the next season, all the rain that we had and everybody around would have been forfeiting games, or games would have not been able to play because we had the foresight to do something that was going to make things better. When I was in high school, indoor track, you ran from the gymnasium back to the CET and back and up and down those stairs and all around. Then you had to go to Lynchburg to be able to have competition. And there are folks who are further south than we are, or west than we are, who don't have those opportunities. And if it's in Christiansburg, that's going to open up a whole new opportunities for folks around the whole area, not to mention just the students in Montgomery County. Folks don't understand that athletics is one of the things that keeps kids walking across the stage so that they are being prepared to be better citizens and contribute to this county and wherever else they may land up. So I don't see that as extravagant at all. I see that as necessary and long overdue. And just like the turf fields, this is something that all of our students will be able to take advantage of. A female athlete, when I was in school, we had to wait until the gym was available. We won't have to do that now. We will be able to have multiple practices, and even probably rec league have access to the facilities because we're not using the one gym.
Yeah,
And oh yes, wrestling, that was an experience, watching wrestlers flop each other around with a pole in the middle of it. I was there because I was the scorekeeper. So I don't see any of this as extravagant. Christiansburg has waited and waited and waited. The price tag has gone up and up and up, just like with everything else. When we had to do something in Blacksburg, and the folks in Auburn said, and rightfully so, not for us because we're next, we found the funds and the resources to be able to do that. And folks would say, well, yeah, it was an emergency. It wasn't an emergency in Auburn. It was absolutely necessary, but it wasn't an emergency. And we found the funds, and we did what we needed to do to make sure that both of those communities got what they needed. It's Christiansburg's time, and we need to be doing what we need to do to make sure Christiansburg is going to get what Christiansburg needs, and quite frankly, again, the rest of the county. Just like that aquatic center that everybody was like, oh, well, it has opened the door for many, many students to be able to do something that they had never had the opportunity to do. We got to think beyond, dollars and how are we going to find it? We're going to find it. We're going to find it because we have done it everywhere else. And the future needs, we're going to find that money, because if this system is not producing a quality education in buildings that are fit, nobody's going to come anyway. Nobody's going to come anyway. So we need to just understand it's going to cost a few pennies to do what's right for this whole school system, not just now in Christiansburg, but in the future. Because if we don't, just like you said, those buildings are not going to get younger. They're not going to just stand still and say, okay, we're going to wait until you can fix this. No. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have to think about the future of this county, and the educational system is what helps drive folks here, not just Virginia Tech. Because if they want to come to Virginia Tech, they're looking at the school system to see what's going to happen there.
Mr. Krantz, if I may add, please let me know if I'm wrong, but we have already, those fields at Christiansburg, I think just about every school in the county has made use of those fields when either their field hasn't been accessible or they haven't been able to play. And I want to say even possibly the town and other county teams have been able to have access to those fields.
Yes,
Is that
some of the
correct?
surrounding counties and cities have
Absolutely.
used
So
that.
we have already been able to help our community by having those fields there. And I also want to point out that with the capital projects, with every other school that's been built thus far, no other school has had to deal with COVID. No other school has had to deal with the rising cost of labor, prices, anything like that. So here it is, Christiansburg's getting kicked again. And, it's just that it's our time. It's Christiansburg time. We need to make sure they get what they need and then some. And there's housing projects going up also in Christiansburg all over, as well as my district down in Ellison and Shawsville. We've got this county is growing. Mm-hmm. So it's not just one part of the county, it's all parts of the county. We need to make sure we keep that in mind.
Can I ask a question just for clarity? If you could explain, Christiansburg's getting kicked again, I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that, and I'm not asking that to be objectionable at all.
No, that's fine.
I just don't understand where that's coming from.
I'm just saying because Christiansburg has had to wait before and basically getting kicked in the fact that we're having to deal with COVID as far as the capital project when no other school has had to deal with that as far as being built.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Rising prices.
Okay,
Things
okay,
be
thank you.
costing more
I thought that's
expensive,
what
yeah.
you meant, but I wasn't really sure.
Just
Yeah.
rising
So
costs.
let me help you some. So in 2006, and you're not going to get tired of me saying that, but I'm going to keep saying it. There was a plan, and Christiansburg was in that plan after Auburn.
Right.
Okay, so the roof collapsed. We had to take care of some things there. Christiansburg got pushed back. The economy in 2008, things fell apart. Christiansburg got pushed back again because there was no funds to be able to do anything. So now here we are again, as Dana has said, prices are going up, everything is more expensive. Well, we didn't get new elementary schools. They are being beautifully refurbished, as you've seen, and now we're going to get not a new high school, but additions and refurbishing to the high school that's already there. So this is the way things are going to be looking in Montgomery County, and quite frankly all over the place, because it has gotten so expensive. But as far as Christiansburg getting kicked back, just like I said earlier, We're getting close to 20 years that Christiansburg has been getting kicked further back, just because of situations that have happened.
And I appreciate that, and I've heard you for several years say that. I'm not surprised to hear it tonight, and I'm really excited that we are this close to moving forward. I think, and
too.
that's why I asked that question, just because I didn't know if that was coming from a place where there was a concern that it just wasn't going to happen again.
Oh,
That's
no,
why I
no.
asked that question.
It was just another dilemma that, once again, Christiansburg was going to have to deal with that some of the other districts haven't had to deal with as
and
far
that's
as
a very fair point.
being,
Yeah.
as far as the capital projects issue. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
And I think, April, to be clear, when I ran, I think at the same time you ran the first time 6 years ago, and I think at least one other Blacksburg area representative, we ran campaigns saying, like, the crux of my campaign is we need to do something about the Christiansburg schools,
Yeah.
right? So,
For
I mean,
sure.
it's, we're all in this as a county, and I absolutely agree that due to both circumstances and really unwillingness, to raise more funds by your body, which is the only body that can give us those funds, right? We've had to delay things. Now I understand that there's political realities at times too, and I also understand, I've always pushed back on, when we did the 12-cent increase a number of years ago, that was a lot for people to stomach, and so I'm not saying that we should have done more at that time, but since I've been on the board for the 6 years, I've been advocating for planning better so that we don't end up in a situation like this. And it's not just the high school. I think with the high school in Christiansburg, I think what Penny summarized it well. But then it also, the planning on the elementary side, I don't know if it wasn't done right or if it was also, those other things compounded that side of things too. So that's why we, when I got on the board, one of the first projects that we came to you guys for was the roughly $8 million for Falling Branch. And then we've methodically basically moved through the whole strand. And I do want to say that from an architecture point of view, I really am impressed with what you guys have come up with. And that's just exciting. I hope the rest of you guys are as excited as I am to look at that plan and to see what's possible. And I really think getting the input of the community, this has been a long process for us. How long ago was it that we did some of our first community input meetings? I feel like it was 4 years ago or more. As far as the delays go, I do think it's a problem when we delay because of everything just keeps getting more expensive. And, I went back and looked at the number for the construction and fit and finish, what do they call it? Fixtures, fit and that FFE. The total price on BHS, which was a comparable size school, I think that was roughly 1,400 students, which I think we're getting in that basic ballpark, was $62.5 million. And I think the first numbers we threw out on Christiansburg were between $70 and $80 million, but that also assumed that we were going to start construction a lot earlier than we have. And so if you look at, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tommy, but I think construction inflation for the last at least 6 years roughly or more has been about 5%. So if you do the simple math on that, $62.5 million becomes pretty close to $100 million right there. So I think along with that $10 million on the ESSER money, imperative that we move forward quickly. Tommy, I was going to ask you, so you've presented 3 different options here. Does our staff have a recommendation on which of the options you prefer or pros and cons or anything like that?
I'm going to answer it 2 ways if I can, and I don't mean to be difficult. If you're going to look at just a pure construction standpoint, indeed, you go with the $100 million. Okay? Because once you go from where we're at schematically today to get to something that'll fit within the $80 million, something has to go. Something has to. taking $20 million out of a project. Financially, the challenge you got, and I agree 100% with how the county does their debt management. I believe it. I think they do a great job with it. And I'm 120% in y'all's corner. Under that option, if we go to 100 million, there's no funds as we get in until we really get to 2030, 2031. So financially, and you know, I'm glad I'm not an elected official because y'all have to decide this. But financially, that's a hole because there's needs in the school system today. Okay? Price is 4. That school's going to reach capacity in the next 5 years. All signs point to that. When that reaches capacity, what happens? And there's a number of scenarios you can set right here. When those scenarios go into play, you'll have more construction needs. Kips Elementary. Right now today, Kips needs a whole new roof. Right now today, Kips needs a whole new mechanical system. Kips, we think of being a new school, is 28 years old, 29 years old. Those are the dollars, those are things I know of. And there's others. Blacksburg Middle School, 2 days ago, we never had a roof leak. Guess what happened 2 days ago with the last rainfall? I got a roof leak. It's at that time. The mechanical system, we're starting to see faults and failures there. It's getting ready to happen. So from an operations standpoint, I say go for everything that they're asking for. From a financial standpoint and knowing the whole district, you know, I'm more inclined to say you go with the $80 million option, but plus the 10, so you're really sitting at $90 million. Another possibility, again, I'm not speaking for the county, this is you and I talking. You know, maybe you do a $90 million. And again, I'm not saying you can or can't do a bond issue, I'm just throwing this out there, because Angie will throw something. It would be a $90 million bond issue with a $10 million rest. That gets you a little bit closer. We as a district got a lot of needs. I hope that answers your question. I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just there's two sides to it.
Well, one of the things that I'm not hearing is whether it's 75, 80, or 100, is that there's a gap and we can't afford not to be able to have funds to meet the other needs. But there is a way to build capacity, to be able to build what we need so that we're not looking down the road in 10 years and going, geez, wish we had done that, right? And that is just like the folks in Montgomery County have done before, have been asked to do before, and that is to raise some money, and that's through taxes, the only way you all are able to do it, unfortunately. But we've got to do what we need to do to build and to be able to maintain what we have. When I came on this board, there hadn't been, except for that time, I think Eastern Montgomery was opening up. There hadn't been a new school built in Montgomery County in 25 years. Right. So that's why we have buildings in the condition that there are now, because it's not cheap. Not just for us, but all over the country, it's not cheap. But that's part of educating our children. You have to have the building to do it. And yeah, I've heard people say, well, when I was in school, it only took that too. But I'm not in school now and it takes a whole lot more. And we've got to come to that reality. If we're not putting things in place to be able to have our children educated with the technology and with everything that they need to be able to be competitive, then what are we doing? So at some point, we're going to pay the piper in this county if we don't start paying for public education, because we're going to have students who are not going to be getting what they need and not being able to contribute to that tax base to be able to keep things moving in the county. So,
and that's why, Ms. Penny, I mentioned possibly you do a $90 million bond, because we've already taken it from $110 million, our initial estimates. We lowered it by 5,000 square feet.
You did.
No, we did with the whole core committee to 106 million.
You did. I did.
Now, when we did the 35 million at the 3 schools, if you asked us at this phase of that budget process, our reserve was close to 15%. because you didn't have bids. You hadn't gone out to the market. You're using approximate numbers. When we got to the GMP phase, our reserve was only 2.5%. Significant difference in dollars. Right now, we're sitting with a 6.5% reserve, plus there's another, let's call it an inflationary reserve. I know that's not exactly what you use, but it's close. And it's about 13%. So I think as the numbers, as we work the numbers, then it will drop further. I don't see it going up unless the market changes dramatically, but I see it coming down, not up, and without cutting things that people want.
No, it's not what people want. It's what's needed.
Well, both needs and want. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we have to be really careful because we did cut in Blacksburg, and now I heard that they are pushing there with the numbers and the space. So if what you said, the projection of CHS will be 1225 in 8 to 10 years, and if we go with the scenario 1, we are already losing it from before even we start. And even scenario 2 is little. So we have to be really careful not to shortchange now, because we're going to talk about this. You know, I mean, you know, I've been on the board 2013, and we've been talking about it. And seems like, you know, we're not going anywhere. We're going to be in a bind no matter what we do, as long as we have to be careful about our debt service, and we don't want to touch the tax rate till we are in a dire need to touch the tax rate, 10, 12, 20 cents. You know, I see that these both boards has to really work together and push the state, because state is the one did this stopping, you know, not building, not paying attention to the infrastructure. Now they cannot handle how to pay for it. And I think we have to really advocate beyond tomorrow, about 10, 20 years down the road, to make sure that they will help us some shape and form. I mean, last time in 30s and 40s, I think federal government built the buildings. Now those are the buildings we have right now. That's why half of the Virginia buildings are 50 years older, and the cost of building all those are $1 billion now. So we will never catch up. I mean, there's no mathematical, logical way to catch up with those, because after one, the other one is going to come. And shortchanging right now, CHS, is not going to help down the road, because we're going to be out of space, you know, if those predictions right, if really the town is or the county is growing the way that it's predicted, you know, and you know, time goes so fast. 8 years I've been on the board, fast like, you know, nothing. So 8 years will be very fast, and we won't have spaces in those classrooms. So we have to be really, really careful.
I agree with Goonan. I think what I said earlier when I was asking about the numbers wasn't that I think we should shortchange CHS, because this is the same thing I'm hearing right now at Blacksburg High School, that it's pretty much at capacity.
Yeah, we
And
did cuts back then.
and I was not on the board back when those decisions were being made, but my understanding is we cut back on some things at Blacksburg High School and the size of Blacksburg High School because of costs, and so now here we are 8 years later with a high school that's not big enough to accommodate the county. All you have to do is look at the plans for Virginia Tech, which I know they're not the only employer in the area, but they are the biggest employer in the area. And the numbers that they're planning on having for students, going up to 50,000 students, and we're only at 30-something now, those are astronomical numbers. And our county is not going to be able to support the infrastructure of the county. It's going to explode, and the school systems cannot support all of those students. And I think that I mean, I realize raising taxes is like a really bad thing, and people hate that idea, but on the other hand, we're living in a county that is just growing exponentially. And I guess as people come in, you have a higher tax base, but there's still a lot that has to be taken care of. And I worry about the future of all of Montgomery County, not just Blacksburg. I live in Blacksburg and I see these things because I live there, but I see the growth in Christiansburg. I mean, you can see Christiansburg exploding also. And I imagine, and Auburn too, I mean, just even from the 20 years, not even 20 years I've lived here, how much it's changed. So I just worry about really planning properly for the future. I don't think we should shortchange CHS, but I worry how we're ever going to be able to do. I also see some of the schools and some of the elementary schools in Blacksburg. Good grief, I don't know how old Margaret Beeks and
They're
Gilbert
from
Linkus.
60s and 70s.
Yeah, I mean, those schools are
60 years old.
old, very old. And Harding is not even, can't even really accommodate, it's the way it was built was not even made to accommodate education today. So, yeah.
So given our current situation, I would certainly support scenario 2. What worries me about all of these scenarios, but it's especially when you look at scenario 1, which is really the rosiest scenario for the future, right? You're basically going to get to projects that are needed, that were needed yesterday. You're going to get to them in about a decade, roughly, right? You're going to get to them between 2028 and 2030, right? That's the best case scenario for the future, right? And if you look at scenario 3, well, actually, before I move on to scenario 3, I mean, one of the things that we were talking about is with some of the other things that we've done in the past, we've kicked the can down the road a little bit. I mean, that's what we did a little bit in Blacksburg back in 2011 because that's the money that we had. And I think, Penny said it well before. I mean, you do what you can with the money that you have, but that doesn't mean that it's always the best decision to make, because here we are 10 years later and we're coming up on the capacity of the building. And it's important to note that, so I think, somebody correct me if I'm wrong on my history, but my understanding is that they tried to design Blacksburg for 1,600. They had to cut it down to 1,400. Current enrollment in Blacksburg is 1,300. So you can say, well, we've got room for 100 more students. And that's true if every single classroom is 100%, if everything lines up perfectly efficiently, which we know that it really doesn't. And so you start to feel the pressure and the pain even before you really hit your official capacity. So that's where we're at today. So if you ask the question, when are we going to get back around to Blacksburg to maybe add, an academic wing or something like that? There's a slew of problems there, and you can see that's not going to happen until, probably more than a decade. We're probably looking at 15 years. So yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't want to make that same mistake at Christiansburg. So I hope we're all in agreement on that. And I do believe that, the pictures that we saw, the schematics that we saw, I think we can support, and I'll support something like that for Christiansburg. I asked Tommy if we can, for that kind of money, can we do, 1,400 at that? And he said that we could. And I think we do have a little bit of wiggle room with the 2.5 cents if the Board of Supervisors would agree to that as well. I mean, I think that gives us a couple years worth of that would be about $5 million. But where I get really concerned is looking at whether you look at scenario 3, which I think is kind of catastrophic, or scenario 2, which is somewhat workable, but it really doesn't leave any room for error. We're talking about all these other, some of our buildings that we built in the 90s coming of age, and we talk about that 2.5 cents. That 2.5 cents isn't always going to be available for us to use for new construction. We need it for maintaining the buildings, the aging buildings that we have. And I guess for me, I'd like to know, for Board of Supervisors, and maybe you guys need to go back and think about this. And but I think we need a plan for what we need to do in the future. And doing some back of the napkin math for me probably says that even 2 cents between maybe between 2 and 4 cents could probably get us, if we, if that, I'm assuming that would increase our borrowing capacity, would allow us to get to some of these other projects that we really should have done yesterday, at least within the next decade, But I do think that we need to think about what's the plan for this, because right now the plan is to just keep kicking things further and further down the road, and they're compounding down the road. So one of the things I think we can do today, and maybe this is a pipe dream, but if the Board of Supervisors would be willing to look at a plan that maybe raised a penny here and a penny there. I don't mean indefinitely, just 1 or 2 or 3, whatever you need, right? Could we then do the full scenario of, 3, meaning, could we do the full whatever we need at Christiansburg to not have to cut back on anything, and at the same time then have the capacity to start getting to some of these other projects even sooner? So that's something I think it would be good to think about. I think, when I look at, the first project is Harding. And, a number of years ago, our board decided that we didn't want to put kids in trailers or modulars. At least that was our priority to get kids out of those units. And we've had kids, and it was one of my kids did it, for a year. We've had kids, 3 classrooms in modulars at Harding. And I think by the time, in some of these scenarios, by the time we get around to solving this problem, there's going to be a whole nother set of new modulars, not just at Harding, but probably going to have them at KIPS and possibly other schools as well. So I think that this is something to really think about and talk about, I think, together as a board about how we move forward. I don't think it takes a whole lot, but it's your body that can kind of solve this problem for us, I think, and help us move forward together.
And again, we have to convince the state to pitch in, because otherwise we will never be able to catch up with this. I mean, I can see how it will work out it will work out in 10, 15, 20 years, but the other needs are going to pile up. So for even up, I don't know if 1 cent here, 2 cents there will help, but hopefully it will.
2 cents would be about $4 to $5 million, and forgive me if my math is off, but maybe the financial people can tell me. I mean, that should get us another 70 to 90, $100 million roughly of borrowing capacity, would it not?
Well, a penny is about 800,000. So if we raise 2 cents, we'd be at 1.6 million.
Okay, so
Annually.
maybe it would take 4 cents to do something like that. Yeah.
And that's what, that's my point is, unless you really touch the tax rate substantially in a consecutive years, you will never be able to catch up.
But even over a decade, if you did 1 or 2 cents, I think it could really come back to help.
As the budget increases, or as our economy grows, so does the value of 1 cent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not stuck at 100,000. We've
Correct.
seen that increase incrementally over the past several years as well. And to your point, very valid. I've indicated twice by voting yes on a tax increase that I am willing to raise the tax rate to support capital needs of our schools. I think that that's an interesting conversation to have.
Well, I would just say I've been talking about this for 26 years, and I've been talking about how you need to have a plan, not just for schools, but for the whole county. You got to have a plan, and the plan needs to include how you're going to fund it. Mm-hmm. And to a point made before, the state, of course, doesn't fund education. We all know that. So it falls to us. Everything we do with taxpayer money in schools as well as anything else is an investment. It's an investment. When you build a school and you invest in a school, you maintain that investment. You maintain that for your citizens, for your students, whatever. So I really agree with Mark. I mean, this is something, and it's difficult because you have to use the only way you're given to raise revenue, and that is real estate property taxes. Nobody wants to talk about it, but if you really want to do some planning and you're really concerned about the growth in the county, then that's what's going to happen. You're going to have to sit down and plan how you're going to pay for it. And no one really wants to talk about that because it's hard to talk about. It's hard on some of our citizens when you raise real estate property tax. But going back to your point about the state, it's the only way they give us, to do things that really brings in a lot of money. So I think that I'm in agreement that it would be really great if we could all come together, and we've got staff on both sides that could actually tell us, okay, this is what it would take. We did this with the Blacksburg Middle School and the Christiansburg Middle School. We asked the county administration and schools, can you come up with a plan? They came up with a plan. This is how much we'd have to raise in taxes over 4 years, a projection. We told the citizens that's what the money was going for. It turned out we didn't even have to raise as much as we thought we were going to have to raise. You're going to have to educate the citizens as to why raising a penny or two is important. What does it buy? That is, it's all part of the process. So I'll get off my soapbox now, because you guys have heard it for 26 years, but that's the only thing that's gonna make it better. So that's all.
Well, it's no soapbox, Mary, that's reality.
Yeah.
It's just reality.
Exactly, reality.
And would love to, and I've said this numerous times, love to sit down like we did in 2006 and do that planning on the county side and the school side to see how we meet the needs we need to do. But right now, we have Christiansburg and a deadline that $10 million, if we don't meet it and we're in the middle of construction, what's going to happen? So we have got to have a decision ASAP about how we're going to meet the needs of Christiansburg. And I really don't want to hear people talk about wants, because everything that's been put up there is something that has been needed for a long time.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's nice to talk about down the road, and I agree 100% right now. And 10 years ago, it was just like, okay, you got to wait your 10 years, and that's just how it is. And so now we got to figure out what's going to happen with Christiansburg. That's on the table. We need to deal with that. And I'm not closed-minded, but, you know, I was just sitting here counting, just since I've been on the board. We've built Blacksburg High School, Price's Fork, Eastern Montgomery High School, Eastern Montgomery Elementary, Auburn High School, an Auburn Middle renovation, and a Fallen Branch renovation. So we get it done. So let's get this done, and then we'll move on to get something else done. But we need to get this done right now. So this is on the table, and we need to decide. I liked your idea about the 90 million split in the difference. You know, if we can't come to the 100, maybe too much, the 80's not enough, kind of find in the middle of the road. I like that idea. It's a nice compromise. What would that look like? Yeah,
A possibility you could do tonight is if we could get the dollars to continue with the design going into construction and tie down our numbers further. With the basic design that's there, let us tie that down more and come back to y'all as a joint body. 45 days, 60 days,
How about 30?
30? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll do it in 30.
Yeah. And that's pushing it big
Yes,
time.
ma'am, it is, but we'll do it.
Yeah, because we've been having this conversation about this deadline
A long
for
time.
several months now. The deadline, the drop dead, we've got to have a decision so that we can move forward to make sure we're going to meet these deadlines.
Board of Supervisors, you've heard our thoughts. What are your thoughts? Where are you guys at? What are you looking at?
I'm not in favor of a tax increase this year. We are getting ready to go through a reassessment, and I know we're going to pick up revenue there. We also have some other increases. We're not really sure. I think you all saw all our numbers. Not really sure how sustainable that is, so it's kind of iffy. I worry more about getting started in this project, and the steel that you need tomorrow won't be here till 6 months.
Right.
Or the bricks, or the glass, or, because we're going through a pretty tumultuous time right now. I worry about that more than finding the money.
Right.
You know how much that we can, how much we can get. We can get $100 million. I don't oppose that, but I do not see a tax increase for this year to get ready for something that's several years ahead.
But as you said, you're doing a reassessment, and that's kind of a different
Yes,
form.
and the more money we bring in, the calculation for how much we can borrow increases too, so.
Mr. Krantz, you said we've not seen any delays in materials?
I mean, we are. I mean, for example, the generators on CES, CPS, and BES, we thought we ordered those over 22 weeks ago.
Okay.
We've had 3 delivery dates. Now the latest was February of 2022. We're having to go incur costs to bring in portable generators so we can get a certificate of occupancy here in December.
Okay.
So we're seeing an increase in our costs as well as just struggling to get items.
Okay.
So to reiterate, what we need now is $5 million, so we can continue to work with the architect to really get things narrowed down. And so that's an immediate need, as in yesterday.
Because Mark, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the 80 million takes us to, I guess, well, we've got the other 18 million on top of it, right? So it takes us to 98 million total. If we did 90, it would be 108, but we've also got roughly 5 million that we can tap in the 2.5 cents, or that we think we would, and I'm assuming that the Board of Supervisors would be supportive of. So aren't we down to basically 5 million at this point, and is that worth delaying? I'm supporting you that let's just move forward. And I don't know, I mean, depending on how things shake out and stuff, I mean, that 5 million,
right,
we can look at
completely in
later,
favor of
can we
moving
not?
forward with whatever's going to be, done. We need, if you just go ahead and vote, to move forward the full amount. Yeah, I mean, I think that would, but I'm just saying we need 5 million to keep moving right now. And so, how the county decides to do that, it's up to them, whether it's moving forward with the entire amount.
Well, and that's something we can talk about with the board, because if we do a borrowing eventually, we can reimburse the 5 million from the borrowing.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, we'd basically be fronting the 5 million so you could keep going and then reimburse it when we do the borrowing.
Okay.
The one challenge I will mention when you look at the scenario 3 is when we've talked about these debt issuances, when we get to the 80, 90, 96.7, $100 million, it requires some substantial structuring of the debt to be able to do that, which means in the first couple of years, the debt is primarily interest-only debt. So we're incurring an additional cost to be able to move that forward ahead of time. When you get up in the $90, $100 million debt issue range, the structuring will still require some additional significant dollars on the county side. One potential source to help with that structuring are the pennies that are being set aside now, because they're being set aside for capital. They could be used for the debt. That is a board decision. That is not a staff decision. Let me make that clear. But when you're looking at a $100 million debt issue and you're having to structure a lot of interest, there's about $1 million, I don't know, I've got it right here. I think it was like $1.4 million, $1.5 million of $1.7 million that the county's got to come up with somewhere to be able to cover that debt. So the short answer is it can be done. The bigger answer is philosophically with the board, how do they want to structure that?
Mr. Krantz, just to make sure I understand, or Mr. Meadows to answer to. So if we use the 2.5 cents, that's going to give me about 2 million. Is that correct? Am I doing those figures correctly?
2.2 million.
2.2 million. And so make sure I understand, to move forward on any of the scenarios, we need 5 million now to secure and to move forward. Okay? And then, that's correct, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then, Mr. Meadows, for us to, however we do the borrowing, we would need 1.7 million up front on the count?
No. It's, if we, in the scenario 3 that Courtney showed the board last week, if you did the 100 million borrowing for the schools, it requires some additional dollars the first couple of years of the debt, not immediately, but the first couple of years of the debt service when the debt service starts. There are additional dollars that will be required over and above what's currently being set aside for debt service. And that first year is as Tommy said, is 1.7 million. So we would have to determine, is that going to be funded through a tax increase? Is it going to be funded by, for that year, instead of putting the 2.5 pennies aside for capital, would that be used to fund that structure? Again, that's a board decision that you'd have to decide how you want to do that.
Well, I'm supportive of getting the 5 million so we can move forward on the Christiansburg project. We've waited long enough.
And you said that we can't use the ESSER or ARP money for that $5 million?
We would, I have to have state approval for that, and I can't tell you right now how long that would take. And to use it just on the design, I think that would be a challenge. If I use it where I tie it to the mechanical system, which is what our plan is under the 10 million, then yes, it does fit within the NRP. But just to do design, I believe I'd be stretching within the.
Yeah, I don't think they'd approve it. That's my opinion. But,
And if the board agrees that we're moving forward with the borrowing, we can probably find the 5 million on the county side to provide to the schools short term until we do the borrowing to reimburse ourselves within a year or so.
Are you saying that you need the $5 million for the next 30 days? Or you need it for, the next year or two? You need to start it now.
You're going to do your construction docs, you'll have done 3 to 4 months. The bulk of that's going to be gone within that period of time.
I have a couple questions in these scenarios, specifically looking at that orange box up there.
Yes, ma'am.
If you just look at the width of that, it straddles 2 years. If you go back to scenario 1.
Oh, don't hold us to that.
No, I know, but I'm trying to understand, graphically, did that even make any sense? Because you would have extended another.
We were trying to find a way to do this. We found a product online and we're still mastering it. So, okay, don't hold me to those on the orange side, please.
No,
Okay.
no.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I'm going to ask the county some questions about the 700 homes that are being built, for example, on Price's Fork. That's going to create a lot of new county revenue. Do we know how much a particular household actually adds to the county revenue?
We do. That's a question that Emily Gibson can help us answer from a planning standpoint. I don't have that number off the top of my head. There is a factor per household.
You also have to remember, the build-out I think, was 15 years, wasn't it?
To full build-out, yes.
Yeah, so it's not like they're going to be built within the next 5 years. So.
That's the ultimate build-out, yes.
But just to kind of summarize everything that Courtney was explaining to us is if we had zero growth. But since we know we have zero growth, we don't have zero growth, and we have regular growth. I apologize, I'm a mathematician or engineer. It's not exponential, okay? But it's very predictable. And so we will have more borrowing capacity in 4 years.
I believe in the scenario that Courtney did, and I'm looking back at Angie. Do you remember the growth factor? Was it 2%? I believe it is too. I think he factors in 2% revenue growth a year.
And what is our average revenue growth over the last 10 years?
We can get that. I can't tell you right off, but
I'm sure
earlier in the 10 years it wasn't good. The last 2 years have been very interesting. So.
Yeah.
Especially
just blank them out.
yeah.
Just blank them out.
And then I just have 3 more questions. If you could go to the picture, whoever's driving this thing, the picture of the first floor of CHS. No, the other one. There you go. So the present gymnasium is the lower left-hand corner. There's only one gymnasium in Christiansburg High School at this point in time. And if you look at the field house, it looks equivalent to 3 more gymnasiums. Is that correct?
So you are correct that there is one existing gymnasium. There would be 3 basketball court sizes in the field house. So it would allow multiple phys ed classes to be happening at the same time. It also allows the indoor track to happen inside of that space, and that's the big part of the reason why it's the size it is because of the indoor track.
And the indoor track is official, meaning the new Blacksburg track is the right size versus the old Blacksburg track was not the right size. This is the right size.
Correct. It'll be a 200-meter track. And let me just talk a little bit more about that. That's something that's greatly needed in this area. It will be something that all 4 high schools will use and will have access to, which is very, very important. It will be an economic driver of this community too. Right now, every weekend, our schools go to Lynchburg, at least the indoor track schools, and that's Auburn, Auburn, Christiansburg, and Blacksburg. They go to Lynchburg, they either go to Liberty University or they go to Heritage High School. And folks come from all over the place just to those 2 locations to actually do indoor track meets. And so pretty much what we would have is a place for them to come to us. And it would be a big money maker for our area. We would be able to host state championship meets, which would fill up the hotels in this area. In fact, Josh, you're saying you have a child who does indoor track.
Yes, so being a parent of two indoor track daughters, it's extremely important that we design this to be correct and that it fits the function. So as an example, another high school is just a little bit short. So when they run these sprints, they actually have a coiling door that rolls up so the students can actually run and finish their event on the outside of the building. So
that's my old high school where I was principal. Actually, you could have said that. Yeah.
There is another.
Yeah. We'd have to actually shovel the snow on the outside when it snowed. So when we roll the door up, no one ran into the snow. Anyway.
So it is a fantastic opportunity to have a facility like this because there's. As Dr. Marr is saying, there is a premium for a facility like this. It's not only for Montgomery County Public Schools, but also is a regional facility. Because if you look there is not another high school regional facility that can accommodate. So you've got to go to Liberty for a regional, for a state event. You can actually host those events. And I said, in my area, which is I live in Fluvanna. We are the only one in the area that has a facility like that. It's actually FUMA, which is Fork Union Military Academy, is the only indoor facility in the area. So there is a premium for it. It's really an asset for all of your high schools and for the school division, but also for the region. It's really an asset.
So for Blacksburg High School, they went from 1 gym to 2 gyms. Is that correct? Or did the old Blacksburg High School have 2 gyms?
Are they full length? Are they full length? Well, they've got. If you go sideways, they have 4 court, or they have 3 court sideways. I think if they go, it's all which direction you go. They actually, I think, can have 3 full courts once the bleachers are back. And then I don't know, Mr. Dauber, do you know?
I think so. The other high schools in the county have 2 gyms.
Yeah.
Right.
And is there any reason why you wouldn't have indoor tennis courts in that field house?
Actually, I can say this. I've actually did that at my old high school because I was a tennis coach. And what you could actually do is there are actually stands that go into the volleyball. The volleyball inserts are. You can actually play tennis too on something like that. Yep, that is possible as well. And so you could probably do 2 indoor tennis courts on the outsides there if they're volleyball courts that are actually there as well. But it depends on the surface of the floor too. That sometimes makes a difference.
And that's a great thought. We could do with the rubberized surface that is a multi-surface it could be anything from basketball to but those stanchions we could use and one thing that we could do, and I love this idea, is that we could actually have the nets that drop down for baseball to be practiced. We could use those same nets for tennis, so that way when you're hitting the tennis ball, it's not flying all over the place. That's a fantastic idea because we could use the same thing and just introduce those nets that come down from the ceiling. It's a great idea.
Yeah, you can't have enough space during the winter time. And if you spend any time in high school, I was a winter coach because I coached basketball. And what would happen is this, because you have to work around wrestling, girls basketball, JV varsity, boys basketball, JV varsity. And we had a practice schedule where kids would have to stay 2 or 3 hours, and Penny mentioned this, before you could even get on the floor to actually, and our kids would be getting home at 9 o'clock at night. So winter is always a tough time. Is that what you're experiencing, Tony?
That's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
Practice till 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying in the very beginning. Athletes would have more access to more space, so they would be more practice time, and you don't have people at 9 o'clock at night dragging in the house.
Is there any chance that that non-students, adults, could use the courts?
Actually, I'll be completely honest with you. In the wintertime, probably not. It will be full. It will be completely booked by the school. The school will be using all of it most all the time. That's always a hope that community can have some type of access. But in a high school gym, it's always an event going on in those places almost constantly. Summer times, yeah, and maybe even spring and fall, maybe some. But when winter comes, those indoor facilities are packed with students.
So I'm going to change the subject completely, and I don't mean to be divisive at all, but as we walked in tonight, there were protesters talking about school choice and vouchers. And potentially in our board meeting, it was discussed that we wouldn't need larger facilities if we gave people choices. Could somebody make sense of that? Is that true? We wouldn't need more facilities? It wouldn't cost more? Is there a way to actually make that math work?
All the students who would choose to do that would have to, or a larger number of students who would choose to do that would have to come from one school. What ends up happening is, if that were to happen, then it would most likely be a situation where kids would be dropping from 20 different schools. Well, if you had 100, 150 kids drop from 20 different schools, you would still need the same capacity in the buildings regardless. I mean, because it's only taking 1 or 2 kids out of a class. The economies of scale in that. I mean, it's not going to have an impact at all.
So regardless if a voucher or tax credits were ever to be entertained at the state level, we would still need this side school.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll just say, one of the things that folks have keep pushing for in private schools and home schools is to let their children come back to the public schools to be able to participate in the extracurricular activities. So then they're still going to be there when it comes to any kind of athletic facility. And eventually those kids are coming back. As I've said before, with integration, folks fled, but then they came back. And you're going to have the building to put them in.
And I apologize, I don't want us to have a discussion about vouchers or tax credits. I just wanted to understand how it affects sizing and costs potentially. So, thank you.
It's actually on the agenda. It's on the agenda anyway. So. It's the next one.
Well, I don't want to instigate a conversation.
Before we get to that, I do want to mention one thing. I know earlier Tommy mentioned the 1.7 million additional dollars that we would be required at that $100 million borrowing mark for debt service. That's actually over 3 years. The first year would require a little less than 700,000. The second year, a little more than 800,000, and then the third year, 200,000, about 200,000. And then we're back to being able to fund it with the existing service. So when I mentioned earlier using, an option may be for the board to consider is using some of the pennies that are being set aside for capital it would be less than a penny of that 2.5 cents if we had to do that. So had the total, I knew that number sounded right, but that was the total. So thank you.
So I'll just say again, I think as Goonan said first, we can't keep kicking the can down the road. And we've got to come up with a plan. But right now, we have to get things moving with Christiansburg, or we're going to lose $10 million. It's that simple. And I don't think anybody in here would want to lose $10 million. No. So we have to make this decision. We need those funds, and we can't keep shortchanging what's happening. In Blacksburg, when those funds were being raised for that, and the dollars were, it's going to be this much, it's going to be this much, and a number was settled on, and then when they start doing the planning, because it kind of happens a little bit in reverse, you got the money first, then started planning some, that's why Blacksburg got cut, and things got cut, because there wasn't enough money planned on in the beginning for that building. Let's not do it again.
Ms. Franklin, are you saying, or I guess to Dr. Meyer or Tommy, is the answer tonight for us to say, yes, we can commit to $5 million to advance this rapidly? Is that
Yes,
the decision that?
Because if we don't get the plans and everything finished up, and be able to break ground in next summer, then we won't meet that 2023 deadline, or the 24 to.
And I mean, I'm here for us doing that.
What I'd like to suggest, I know Chair and Vice Chair have an agenda review coming up either today or tomorrow. I can't remember which day. Tomorrow. I'm out of town tomorrow. We will discuss that and see if it can be added to the agenda for Monday night's meeting, and we will help advise on how that can be funded between now and then. So
the $5 million?
Yes, ma'am. We'll have that on the agenda. Should the Chair and Vice Chair be willing, we'll have that on the agenda for Monday night.
It sounds like the bulk of it, the bulk of the borrowing is a decision that we still have some details to work out, but that at least
gets it going. They've got to do the A&E to fine tune the number so we know how much ultimately there is going to need. Yes.
And then Tommy, what did you say about when we would need to know an answer on the rest?
We would need, if they do a bond issue in that April, May, that's when you need to have your dollars, because that flows into the bond. And how much that, because there's multiple ratios that the county maintains on their credit rates, not just schools.
Sure.
And so that's the other thing, they've got to work and make sure everything fits inside those different matrices that they've got to work on.
But we last Tuesday night, Davenport gave us a very favorable report, and we can make some things work. It may require a little structural decisions, but we can make it work. It's up to the board to determine ultimately what the borrowing capacity you're comfortable with is, but we can make it work.
I sincerely hope that it will be definitely not less than scenario 2, and something between scenario 2 and 3. If you like to develop scenario 2.5, that will be okay too. But if we do less than scenario 2, we'll be at capacity, in a heartbeat. So you have to be really careful.
Well, you do understand when Courtney come to us, if we go to $100 million,
I watched the video, Mr.
what's going to happen if you have an emergency at your school, you have no borrowing capacity? What's going to happen?
I'm not saying we should go to scenario 3. So that's the scenario 3 when we had the whole 100 million. So I'm saying something between 80 and 100. That we will have a little more capacity, but not all the way using the 100 million. That's what I'm suggesting.
As long as I've been on this board, I am a big supporter of Christiansburg High School. Everybody has waited. Christiansburg has waited. It's their turn. I agree with that. But we also got to look at the future too. because I'm gonna tell you up front, I am not for no tax increase. I will not vote for one.
So it was a
So-
tax
so
increase.
we have to look at the school's borrowing power and the counties.
Well, we don't have borrowing power.
Well, I'm talking about on your side of the county. I know you can't borrow money, but we can borrow it for you.
My
There's
worry
there's
will
two
be,
sections.
my worry will be building that school too small.
Yes.
We have to really be careful about that too. I mean, I know what you're saying. I know, what we can do. That's why actually I'm all pushing the state so that they can help us build schools. Because I know if you don't touch the tax, you don't touch the debt ceiling, how are we gonna do all those buildings, maintain and build from year to year? We have these discussions many times. We all know that. I know we have the means, limit to our means. But then again, buildings are getting old, prices are getting increasing, and area is getting bigger and bigger. So we gotta somehow sit together and figure out how we can do this so we don't have to, God forbid, deal with a roof collapse, that we have to raise the taxes. That's what I'm coming from.
I would like us to consider the largest option, because Courtney did say, not this last time because we didn't ask him the question, he did say if there was an emergency, we can go over the 12%. It's temporary. It wouldn't necessarily change our bond rating. So if we did have an emergency, we would be able to do that. But I also have a lot of confidence in this county that our growth is more than the 2% that's baked into Courtney's estimate, that we're going to have more borrowing capacity before 2035 than we think. So I personally think that we're going to be okay. And the interest rates are not going to get lower. So if we're going to if we're going to issue debt, and let's move forward with this plan.
Yep, so I'm gonna say this again, and it's not to be ugly, it's the fact. Blacksburg was an emergency. Auburn was necessary, but not an emergency. And that increase was to also do Auburn High School and Auburn Middle School. So in Christiansburg, if it's gonna take a couple of pennies to be able to get what we need, and then still be able to deal with the other projects that are needed in this school system, we can't keep kicking it down the road. When there's a tax increase, my taxes go up too, and everybody I know, their taxes go up too. But I know, as Mary said, it's an investment in this county. And if we're not investing in the schools, what's the point? What's the point?
I don't think we have to raise the taxes in order to do what we need to do for this school right now. We can entertain raising taxes later on if it's necessary. It's not necessary. We have the borrowing capacity. We have to structure it. I mean, we are in 2021. We can do the math. And we know from Courtney in past conversations that, gosh forbid, there's an emergency, we are able to deal with the emergency. Taxes don't even need to be on the table at this point, as far as my interpretation, but maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I'm reading the dollars and cents.